Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Trust issues are omnipresent. The US VCs have not arrived yet, and we love it here. Are only 3 of the 10 learnings I want to elaborate on with you guys now. We've been looking at this market since 2017, and we've been investing out of our fund at Sunfish Partners since 2019. One of the founding partners there, and it's been a very educational time for us. It's been an inspiring time for us, and it's been a fun time for us, and I'd like to share some of that with you guys now. Sunfish Partners is an early stage VC that invests in Polish deep tech startups with global ambitions. We're normally first money in, first 250 to 500k euro for the teams, and whatever is best for the team. Sometimes we co-invest with angels, sometimes we co-invest with other VCs. But we're not afraid to be the only one to be backing teams early. Number 1, trust issues are omnipresent. In most startup ecosystems, trust is the default. In Poland, in our opinion, it's not. So like there's a high level of mistrust among all the different parties. Investors, founders, lawyers, and we've seen many situations where really a lot of time is spent on trying to think of hypothetical edge cases that might happen sometime in the future. And I mean, A, I think this is frustrating, and B, this is really not efficient, right? Because nothing is more precious than founder time. And while it might feel smart intellectually to be thinking of the weirdest edge cases that will probably never happen, and this is just not efficient to get deals done, right? I do understand that there might be historical reasons why trust is at a generally lower level or that corruption is higher here, but at least from all the founders I've interacted with, or most of them and most of the VCs and lawyers and so forth, I think at the early stage investing level, the ethical standards are just as high as everywhere. And I think the whole ecosystem can really benefit from trusting a little more and getting things done at that stage. Unique unicorns are in the making, right? So Poland has its first unicorns, and I don't want to take away from that. That is impressive. Big congrats goes out to the founders of these companies, the employees, the VCs who all have made that happen. However, I'm personally not too excited about these companies because that's unicorn 1.0, right? Sort of like it's the eBay of Poland, right? Sort of like the XYZ of Poland. Whereas I think now we're at a stage where we're soon going to see the first unique unicorns, right? A company that by itself is not just a copycat version of something else where that company is a unicorn in 10 geographies at the same time, and Poland happens to be one of them, but the first standout company. And we first, I mean, I think we already have the first unique slottycorns, right? So million slotties in terms of valuation. And if nothing goes wrong, I'm very confident that this year or latest next year, we're going to have the first unique unicorns here in Poland as well. And that will give the market a very big uplift, right? I mean, think UiPath in Romania, which is a unique unicorn in my opinion. And then all of a sudden that puts us on a map in a different way. ESOPs are tricky, but a must. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is, show me the incentives and I show you the outcome, with Charlie Munger, and that really is so true. I believe that in a startup, every critical employee, actually every employee, should have skin in the game by having shares, right? And an employee stock option plan, be it in actual or in virtual form, is the way to get this to work. Legally, this can be challenging and it's tricky because, I mean, not just in Poland, everywhere in the world, because financial authorities never give you final answers. So it's hard to figure this out, but it's important to get this right. And I mean, what we're doing, we're sharing, we're connecting our founders in the portfolio to figure this out together. I mean, we're not there yet, but once we have a blueprint that should work 90%, we're going to open source this so the whole market can use this and learn from this. I think just as important as getting this right on the legal side of things is actually communicating this. Because while you would assume that every employee really wants to get equity in that company, in particular when it comes to tech hires, that needs a lot of convincing and salesmanship of the founders to really get everybody excited a bit about this and have people understand the true value of having equity in a company. Software houses are a blessing and a curse. I mean, there's a lot of software houses in Poland. I mean, per capita, way more software houses here than in Germany, for instance. And I think overall, I mean, this is an essential part of this ecosystem. It's one of the unique things. But depending on whose point of view you take, I think there's pros and cons with these software houses, right? It's not black or white. It's colorful. And to just give you a couple examples, from the founder's point of view, yes, in times of hypergrowth, it's great if you're running out of your own resources to have someone on hire and have a software house that you can leverage the people, the skills, and so forth. At the same time, let's be honest, sort of like you're competing for some technical roles with these software houses for employers, right? And normally you as the startup are not the one who can compete on stability, on salary, on reputation. So sort of like it's a tricky relationship. Similarly for us as VCs, right? There's quite a few software houses who pitch to us every month saying, okay, we're a software house now, but agency business is not the thing we want to keep doing. We want to twist this. We want to become a high growth startup. And if this works out, and it sometimes does, I mean, we haven't announced this yet, but we recently made an investment in one such case, then it can be very powerful because obviously the founders have a lot of managerial expertise. They've built an organization, led a team. On the other hand, it's sometimes tricky for us to figure out if that is really what the software house is doing, or if they just want to leverage our money to be running a side project and trying this out, or in some cases, there are software houses pitching to a number of different VCs, different side projects they want to be doing. So we really have to check for commitment and also sort of like the mindset, right? It's a fundamentally different thing. It's not better or worse, it's just fundamentally different if you're running a stable agency business or if you want to do the high risk, high growth potential startup track. EU grants can be useful, but used wisely. A lot of opportunity for EU grants, and obviously it might be an interesting component to add to the fundraising mix of a startup. Can be equity free in some cases. I think pretty much all programs are well-intentioned. How they're designed in the end differs vastly. So I think it's very important to look at the details there to get an understanding, because some can be of tremendous help, and we've had teams in our portfolio leverage some of them, actively decide for them. Others not so much, because some of these programs can be bureaucratic nightmares. They can have really weird strings attached, and even if they work out for a startup now, they might make it much less likely or almost impossible for top VCs that invest on international standards in the coming rounds to enter the company. So you really want to be thinking about this. A whole industry has popped up of grant consultants, and there I think it's also a matter of experience, because some of these people are really worth their money and they're great at helping the teams. A lot of them are mediocre or bad and not worth their money. So it's also very important to filter properly and get reference checks from other startups who've worked with them. Everybody loves to bargain in Poland, and a bargain Krakow style, a word I learned here, dates back to the 17th century when merchants in an old market square in Krakow were bargaining happily and haggling like crazy, and one person would make an offer that's way off and the other person would counter with an offer that's way off, and this would go on for a while, and in the end, you somewhere meet in the middle ground, right? Obviously, that's a super inefficient process, because had both parties started with a more reasonable first offer, they would have ended up on the same middle ground, right? I think there's a bunch of explanations for this. I think one, quite frankly, I do think Polish people enjoy negotiating to a certain degree, more than I personally do enjoy it. On the other hand, I do think that this changes over time, or I hope it's going to change over time, because again, like founder time is so precious, right? So you don't want to be spending it on negotiating, in particular if the end goal is going to be the same thing, right? The tricky part about this, it's hard to change this, right? Because even if I have the intention of making a reasonable first offer, unless the other party knows that's what I'm doing, it's a prisoner's dilemma, right? If I do that, they're just going to assume, okay, now this reasonable offer, oh, that's actually the crappy offer, right? So it almost forces people who want to make reasonable offers to give themselves extra wiggle room, right? So it's tough for us. Sometimes we have to think, okay, this is what we want to do. We know this is what we're going to end up with. But if I say this now, founders not going to believe us that this is a reasonable offer. So we have to start somewhere else to, in the end up at the same spot in the middle. The one thing that gives me hope, obviously, is like the more frequently you interact with the same parties, right? There's lawyers who've been on our side, on the other side, back and forth many times. So people know you, plus it gets a lot easier in follow-on rounds, because obviously you have a much stronger relationship with the startup, and they know how serious you are about things. Number 7, the ecosystem is changing rapidly. I think that's the obvious one. I don't have to explain this to anyone. It's just fascinating to see how dynamic it is, how many new faces there are every time, how many new funds are coming up. The things I'm most excited about, that international standards are coming through, and more startups are smartening up on them, and investors as well, and really try to see what works elsewhere and what can also work in Poland. Obviously, every ecosystem is unique and has its unique strengths and weaknesses, but a lot of best practice in venture really can be implemented. I think it's also a key learning from the industry. I think 5 years ago, also like the law firm had much more of PE goggles on from their experience and their background, which can be quite different from doing very early stage deals like we do. I think there's been a huge learning curve there too. Yeah, and I can only encourage this. More money on the market as well, right? Some people might even say, okay, isn't there too much money at the early stage? I don't think we're nearly there yet, because at least from my experience, we're not at the point where every talented founder in Poland has a number of great VCs to choose from. And I don't think we're there yet. And so long way to go, but overall I'm very happy how it's maturing here. The top US VCs have not yet arrived. Ever since we touched ground in Poland 5 years ago, people have been saying top US VCs are right around the corner. Well, they still are. 5 years later, what do I mean by that? I mean, I have not, or I've yet to see a seed round in Poland or a pre-seed round where Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia are both pitching and only one can get in, right? Eventually this will happen, but that's a couple of years out. I also think we probably have a 2-year delay now. I think we were getting closer to this before COVID hits, right? But COVID and first investment in Poland, there's maybe would have been too much uncertainty for the top US VCs, right? Could have said, okay, I'm happy to do my first seed investment in Poland, and I can also do investments over the Zoom. But so like combining those two, first time ever in Poland, and then not even seeing the team or the angels and so forth that are investing it, probably a little bit too much. But this, I think, is a matter of time, because you see how the top US VCs are setting up additional shops in London and Berlin, in Paris. We also get contacted much more frequently now with people who just want to like educate themselves about the Polish opportunities and the ecosystem. So obviously they're going to be here eventually. So let's hope they're a little closer to the end of that corner. The risk-reward profile is very attractive. I mean, it's the reason we're here, right? Yes, it's super risky here. Yes, it's a lot of work to do a great job. Yes, as always in venture, luck is a big component. Timing is a big component. However, the rewards for being here early, I think, like are much bigger than that. So this is one of the best risk-reward profiles I think there is in the world right now. And Poland is at that interesting sweet spot, right? I do think there's enough infrastructure that we're ready, and we now have the first unique sloticorns, and hopefully soon we're going to have the first unique unicorns in Poland, right? There's enough capital, infrastructure, best practices. At the same time, it's not obvious how good Poland is yet. There aren't too many great players from abroad here fishing in this pool. So this is not like the Berlin ecosystem with all its pros and cons, where in the end a number of VCs are pitching for every single good deal to get in. And 50% of the job of a VC is doing marketing, and that also drives up round prices, which sometimes might be justified, but sometimes might not be justified. And in the end, obviously, higher pricing on everything is gonna influence the reward expectations as well. And I think we're at a nice sweet spot here where valuations, they're not too high, they're not too low, they're fair. I mean, there's exceptions everywhere, but I think they're fair, and this is an attractive risk profile. And number 10, we love it here. It's been great seeing how this ecosystem has evolved over the last 5 years. It's been a true privilege to have spent so much time and to learn so much from the great founders in this ecosystem. So we're definitely not going anywhere. We're happy to be doubling down on Poland and beyond with future funds. And we're really happy that we get to be part of this ecosystem. I'm going to leave my email right here, and I'm also going to be here all day, so feel free to reach out to me and let's chat if we can work together in any way. And just as the last slide, I'm going to put a summary up there of all the points. I've also posted them on our Twitter and our LinkedIn in case you want that recap. And yeah, and that leaves me to say thank you for your time and I wish you a great conference.
I mean, what's not to love about it?